So Buffett was asked one time that, look, if a genie shows up and the genie says, Mr. Buffett, you're like such a good guy. I want to give you any wish you want. So Warren said, I only want one wish. He says that when they look at my corpse when I'm dead, they should say, man, he was old. Okay, and he doesn't want to live a long time because he likes to hang out with us. He just wants a very long runway of compounding. And that's all he cares about. Einstein used to say that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And the reason he said that is that, so Sanjay, if you have $1,000 and you find one of these 5 baggers, let's say even every 10 years, right? And you start at the age of 20 and you're dead at the age of 80, for example. So you got 6 decades, right? Every decade, your money multiplies 5x. So 5,000 becomes 25,000 when you're 30. It becomes 125,000 when you're 40. And it becomes 625,000 when you're 50. It becomes a little over 3 million when you're 60. It becomes 15 million when you're 70. And you've got 75 million when you're 80 and dead. And that's not $1,000 or $5,000, right?
Monish nos dice aquí que si somos capaces de encontrar una acción que se multiplique por 5 cada 10 años, en 60 años podríamos convertir $5.000 en unos 75 millones de dólares. En este vídeo también nos da un contexto y es el que dediquemos 40 horas semanales a investigar y encontrar estas oportunidades. No obstante, podéis estar pensando que este tipo de acciones son muy difíciles de encontrar. Estoy de acuerdo. Vamos a pensar en encontrar acciones que se puedan doblar en 5 años, un 15% de retorno anual. Esto es más asequible. ¿Cuánto creéis que sería nuestra cantidad final empezando por $5.000? Pues casi 22 millones de dólares. Tampoco está nada mal.
2 years back when my younger daughter was about 18 years old, she had just done an internship, summer internship before starting college. And she had made about $5,000 over the summer, 3 months. And I told her, listen, this $5,000, you don't really need it. Can we open a Roth IRA account, which is a kind of like a retirement account? It basically the money in that account stays tax-free forever, including all the growth of that account. So you can put about $7,000 a year into an account like that in the US. And she said, yeah, no problem. I said, and is it okay with you? I said, if you give me power of attorney to manage that account. She said, yeah, sure. So I said, this $5,000, let's say I am able to grow it at 15% a year. So I said that when you are 68 years old, how much would this $5,000 have become? So, this was like 2 in the morning, I'm driving her back to the airport and she's sleepy and she said, I don't know. So I said, well, rule of 72, which is a kind of a shortcut we use with compounding, which is something you can Google and look up. But basically, if you do 72 divided by 15, it is approximately 5. And so a 15% compounded return is going to double every 5 years. So the $5,000 when she is 23 years old would become 10,000. And then when she is 28 years old, will become 20,000. And when she's 33 years old, it will become 40,000 and so on. It'll keep doubling every 5 years. And from 18 to 68 is 50 years. And 50 years, if you chop it up into 5-year chunks, is 10 doubles. So 10 doubles is 2 to the power of 10, which is 1,024. And so let's throw away the 24 because we want to do math in our heads. So $5,000 would become $5 million because we would add 3 zeros, right? And so I said, well, at 68, you would have $5 million. So now she's wide awake. Okay, how did 5,000 become? Because 5,000 is about, 3.5 lakhs, right? And 5 million is, about 35 crores. So it's a pretty significant jump from 3.5 lakhs to 35 crores. So then I said, but this is $5 million that has come from your earnings just from one summer internship. When you are 19, you may do another internship. You may make another $5,000. And at 68 or 69, that's going to be another 5 million. And at some point you will graduate, maybe at 22. And instead of 5,000, you might be saving 10, 15,000 because your income will be up. And that's going to go through a 40, 50 year compounding. And over time, you'll get raises and you'll keep putting this some money away and so on. So I said, what would be the total amount of money you would have if we did this compounding with all your income and everything going through? How much money would you have at 68? She said, I don't know, it's too big a number. My head will explode. And you can see that when you run the power of compounding, the surprising thing is, why does everyone not end up wealthy? Because basically, acorns grow into oaks. But the important thing is that you have to spend less than you earn, right? And you have to put the money away, and you have to have some reasonable way, like you can buy an index fund or something, some reasonable way to run that money.
Si te estoy aportando valor, te agradezco mucho un like, que me ayuda muchísimo siendo un canal pequeño, y considera suscribirte si quieres ver más contenidos como este de inversiones, dividendos y finanzas.
In the 1950s, Buffett wrote a letter to his investors, and he brought up the deal the American Indians in 1626 had done with the Dutch. So in 1626, these Inuit Indians in the US owned the island of Manhattan. In New York, the island of Manhattan was owned by the Indians, and the Dutch wanted to buy that island. So they approached the Indians, and they were able to come to an agreement to buy the island for $20. And so in 1626, a transaction was done. $20 was given to the Indians, and title of that island that we now know as Manhattan passed to the Dutch. And so when people hear that story, they say, oh, the Indians got taken advantage of. This is so much land and so precious and so important. But, the thing that Buffett brings up is that, let's say the Indians had a trust officer or investment officer who was given this $20 and said, please invest this for the benefit of the tribe. And let's say that trust officer was not able to get 15% a year. Let's say he's only able to get 7% a year return. So we can again use the rule of 72. And so the money will double every 10 years. Okay, so 1636 will become $40 and 1646 will become $80 and so on. So if you take a 100-year period, it's 10 doubles, same thing, just like we saw before. And 10 doubles we know is 1,024. So what happens is the 1626 $20 in 1725 is $20,000. And in 1825, it is $20 million. And in 1925, it's $20 billion. And in 2025, it is $20 trillion. Okay? Now, we are not at 2025. So we have to take away maybe a few years. So you can say that in 2016, it was $10 trillion. There was one more double coming. And maybe it's 7%, you would be maybe at 12, 13 trillion or something by 2021. So undeveloped land in Manhattan, which was sold in 1626, if it had compounded at 7%, it would be, 12 or 13 trillion dollars. So then the question is, how does that compare to the actual value of that land today? And we don't have an exact idea, but we can make a good guess. So if you look at the entire wealth of the United States, all the wealth of every man, woman, and child in the US, it is about 125 trillion. All the homes, all the stocks, all the Apple, Google, everything, you include everything, it's about 125 trillion. Okay. Manhattan is just one relatively small city. It's a big city, but it's a very small part of the US. And probably if you did the study of how much land is being sold in Manhattan for, you will come up with a value of a few $billion, maybe 50 billion, possibly maybe 100 billion or something. It would not even be like 1% of the 13 trillion. Okay. Now, the thing is, we can go backwards also. So like 1626, $20. If you go back 100 years, 1526, you would take away 3 zeros, right? So it's 2000 cents is $20. It would be 2 cents. Okay, so the deal had happened 100 years before that. At 2 cents, you would still have the 13 trillion today. And if you go back another 10 years, you would be down to 1 cent. Okay, so 1 cent also becomes. So the thing is that this is the magic of compounding. So there are 3 variables that matter in terms of how things compound. So one is the amount of money you start with, right? That's the first variable. The second variable is the compounding rate, 5%, 7%, 15%, etc. And the third is the length of the runway, right? How many years do you have, right? So if you have a very long runway, it doesn't matter how much money you start with, and it also doesn't matter how low the compounding rate is. So even with a relatively low compounding rate, and even with a relatively low starting amount, like in our case, 1 cent, you still end up with a huge number.